So we're back again on one of my coffee chats, and today I've got the lovely Miriam from ApprovalMax joining me. Welcome, Miriam. And we've got a heck of a lot to talk about today. But before we go ahead and get into it, I think it's worth firstly mentioning where I met Miriam and then handing the mic over so that Miriam can introduce herself. So we met, I want to say it was it ZeroCon? Was it? No, it wasn't. It was ZeroCon. It was at the Accountex London for the first time at a really, really nice meal that ApprovalMax were hosting. And I had the pleasure of sitting next to Miriam and getting to know her in the evening. So we shared a few laughs. And got to know each other's backgrounds a little bit, where we both came from. And yeah, built this rapport. So I thought it would be really, really great opportunity to bring ApprovalMax and Miriam onto the channel to showcase really what they do, and also to have a bit of a conversation around the topic we're going to discuss in a second. So Miriam, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. So my name is Miriam Owusu, and I work for a company called ApprovalMax. And in essence, ApprovalMax is a software that enables businesses to automate approval workflows. And what that means is if a business is having trouble automating the approval workflows for like a financial document, such as an invoice or a purchase order, and they're doing it manually, we enable businesses to integrate with Xero, QuickBooks, NetSuite, Sin7 Core, and pull in all their financial documents in and create these really cool multi-level, multi-step workflows and just automate it and save time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it's funny though, because I've always had a really keen interest in automation for one. And I'm a firm believer that if you've done something 3 times, then it needs to be looked at, and to see if there's a better way of doing that, if we can automate that, what that looks like. And also because I came from an audit background, so I spent quite a number of years in audit, in terms of automation and financial controls, that is my bag. And some people hate it, I love it. And so let's just let me just put this here a step. This is what happens when you've got to control all the tech. So in terms of, I'd say, we were just talking about this just before we went live. The last sort of 5 to 10 years, I don't know about you, but I've seen a bit of a shift in terms of the attitude towards financial controls in general. And if I'd have gone back a decade or so ago, they weren't at the forefront of, I'd say, most business owners' agenda, really. Some businesses that I'd worked with in the past didn't have any sort of financial controls, or very, very loose around the edges, sort of patchwork, a sticker plaster on it, sort of controls. But I'm seeing a huge shift definitely in speaking to other bookkeepers and accountants in particular, and also quite a few business owners, in this sort of risk-based approach to running their business. Is that something that you're starting to see? And do you think that that's sort of come together more over the last few years?
Absolutely. So, yeah, to your point, Rebecca, there is a shift, and I think it's a good shift. And I think the reason why businesses are starting to look into this a bit more is because ultimately, as a business, your main aim is to maximize revenue and profit and minimize losses. And the reality is, if you don't have strong financial controls in place, and we'll go into this later, like the implication of it is huge. You can lose a substantial amount of money. I deal with a lot of accounting firms that have clients who, unfortunately, have been victims to things like AP fraud. And I think businesses are starting to wake up. And there are systems and softwares like ApprovalMax in place that can essentially do the hard work for you. You don't need to just sit there and think, oh my gosh, how do I do it? There's systems that can automate it. And it's a good change. And I'm glad that change is happening now.
Yeah, and as you say, I think it's interesting. I actually worked at a company quite a few years ago, and one of the first things that I implemented as FC was, okay, well, let's go ahead and set up an approved supplier listing. So, to make sure that we were making use of discounts, and we were making sure that whoever we were purchasing from, we knew that we were going to receive those goods in, that were not damaged, that were arriving on time at the right site, etc. And we had all of that is push that various systems incredibly. And that was because we were financial controls. And at the time, it was almost trying to translate that to the business owners to say, well, you know, if we don't have this listing, you're opening yourself up to potential fraud and potential risk, because anybody can go ahead and purchase from a supplier. Anybody can change bank details on a supplier's invoice. And then all of a sudden you're paying into, someone else's bank account potentially, when you should be paying that supplier, and having all sorts of cash flow issues and other impacts along the road. And again, that's just one really small example. So I'm excited actually about the way that we're looking at this going forward, and that more systems companies are adopting this. And something that, again, I've spoken to tons of bookkeepers in particular about this. It's really, really hard sometimes to know where to start. And if you've never seen a robust financial control system, it can be really daunting. So how can you assist with that? What does that sort of look like? What tools do you give bookkeepers, accountants, and other companies in different industries to get a head start?
Yeah, that's a good point. It can be overwhelming to think about, where do I start, right? I think ultimately the first thing is to start small. When we talk about automation, you don't need to change the world, right? But start small. So some of the things that we do at ApprovalMax is we equipped our clients and those who use our systems with various different resources, be it regular webinars. So we've now got monthly webinars where businesses, organizations who are using ApprovalMax or who aren't are able to see how the system looks. I believe today, actually, we've actually got our product update webinar, whereby, and that's taking place later on this afternoon. So if you haven't signed up, do sign up, where we've got our amazing solutions engineer, Alex Kesselman, just talking through what updates we've implemented and how businesses can use that to their advantage. And even for me, my role is a partner success manager. What that means is I manage a portfolio of accounts, primarily accounting firms of very different sizes. So when they look to purchase our system or inquire about our system, I'm pretty much their main point of contact to help them with onboarding their clients, implementing the software, because as you said, it can be overwhelming. It can look strange if you're not familiar with the systems, but I promise you, especially with ApprovalMax, one of the biggest feedbacks we get is that it's user friendly. The interface, like even when I joined the company, I was like, can it get as simple as this? So, honestly speaking, I'm not just saying that because I work here. It's very, very simple to navigate. But even for those who are worried, there's support, and you will be handheld throughout that process. And our support is exceptional, like next to none. So even if, for example, I'm away on holiday in Dubai or anything like that, we've got a team who are pretty much on hand, our support team, who would deal with queries and questions. So yeah, there's a lot of support. There's a lot of support.
Yeah. And I like that, because it's just two relevant KPIs I have in my business anyway, is keep everything simple, stupid, legitimately. And it was something my granddad said years and years ago. And he was the floor manager at BAE, and he used to say, if everything is simple and easy to follow and everybody knows exactly where they stand, then the job will get done, and it'll get done very, very well. And it's that. So I think you're embracing the same sort of ethos there. And also, I always think, from my point of view as the business owner, I want to be able to see the process, and I want to be able to see that that process is, almost as much as is physically possible, a copy and paste to each client. So one person isn't doing something different over here to somebody else, but that there is a little bit of an element of bespoke to that, to make sure that it is as streamlined as it possibly can be, and bespoke to that particular client. So it's all of that you're trying to take in mind when preparing financial controls. What I was going to say, I'm just looking over here, by the way, because I've got a few questions for you. So what would you say then is the best way to tighten financial controls for businesses? I've got a massive opinion on this, but in terms of, from your point of view, what is the best way to tighten financial controls? Is it a case of bringing in more than one person? Is it a case of, is it best to keep that team minimum, or to bring in other individuals, experts outside of the business maybe? What's your experience?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say there's so many things, there's so many ways to look at that. But I would say, because I'm kind of thinking about your one-man band or a business that has maybe a nimble small team, right, to businesses that are turning over multi-million, it will look differently. But I would first and foremost say education is very, very important, because I think sometimes when we talk about financial controls, a lot of people don't understand what it means.
No,
And
it's like a buzzword.
financial controls, but what does that mean? As a business, can you educate your staff about the the repercussions if you don't have strong financial controls in place? Because let's say I'm an employee, I've joined a company, right? If there aren't tight financial controls and someone within the business, whether it's a financial director or CFO, is misusing funds, that can ultimately lead to that business going into administration. So I could lose my job off the back of that. So if I understand, okay, as an employee, if there's not financial controls that are tight within that business, I could lose my job, then I know the impact of that. So I think there's definitely an education piece, like taking that word of financial control and breaking it down as a business to your staff, and to the wider team, irrespective of how big you are. And I would say the next thing is speaking to your community or those you're around about what systems are about. So, for example, we integrate with Zero. Zero have a community, right? Zero, if you go onto Zero's app store, you're able to see all the various different softwares, including ours, and you can also look at reviews. So if you are looking up about tightening financial controls, rather than having to look at Google and research, you can tap into systems like Zero, look at what people are saying about apps like ApprovalMax. What's the impact? What has it done for businesses?
Sorry, I didn't understand, but I found you want to know what is the NHS definition of research.
Interesting. Looks like Google Google Chrome's listening to our conversation, Rebecca. They're trying to, I guess Google Chrome's trying to tighten its financial controls. But those are the kind of things I would say businesses should look at. And, just another point, I was looking at a study taken by the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, and they did a report recently, and they do a regular report on businesses, and they look at the impact of not having things like tight financial controls in place. And I was stunned, absolutely stunned. And for example, in 2024, they did a report and they found that on average, businesses lose about 120,000 US dollars a year due to the fact that they don't have strong financial controls. And how does that happen? So there's things like occupational fraud, where an executive or an employee can create fake bills or invoices, for example, and misuse funds. And just imagine if you're a small business and you lose, I mean, I know what I could do with 120,000. I mean, Rebecca, I'm sure you know what you could do. So if you're a small business trying to build your business in that kind of level of financial implication is impact, that's massive. So it's understanding the impact and going from there.
And also, I think if you don't have those tight controls in your business, and let's just say that there is a data breach or there's some sort of ramification that is public, how is that going to look to potential customers and those suppliers that you work with? Because I've seen companies where they will not work with that particular company because they've had adverse media because of something along the same lines. So it's that long-term aspect. Even if there's no cash implication, etc., you've always going to have a potential legal consequence of not having those tight controls. But that long-standing, and I don't know why this happens to me, but I always think about Bev Flanagan and her discussions of around exit planning of a business. I'm always conscious. I'm always almost in a very strange way. Every time that I look at a business, whether it's an external client or it's my own business, it's what does that exit plan look like, and what do I want the business to look like where are we heading, what, you know, what's the ultimate goal, etc. And I'm always thinking, well, you need to have this strong control process, almost a how-to's dummy guide in every aspect. And if you don't have that, you are not only are you opening yourself up to all of these different risks, but also from a time perspective, the amount of time that you spend as a manager or even as a junior asking the question of, well, what do we do in this circumstance? Well, what do we do when this happens? Or this has happened, now I've got to figure out how to deal with it. If that almost dummy's guide of financial controls are already established and everybody knows where they stand, everybody knows where to find that information, you're going to save yourself so much time over the course of a year. That's incredible. Oh, hi, Michael. Hi, Midas. I always forget to say hi to those in the chat. Hi, Valeria and Paul. But yeah, it's quite significant over the course of a year. And particularly if you've got a larger team, then again, that time saving is going to be incredible if you've got good controls in place. Have you ever had any experience of that where you've walked into a company and there is nothing, or as I say, the bare bones of the how-to guides, the segregation of duty, this is what we do, etc., this is what we use, all the rest of it? I know I've had many experiences that I'm not going to go into too much detail on, but yeah, can't just.
Yeah, absolutely. Like a lot of the businesses that we deal with, prior to looking at a software like ApprovalMax, they may be doing it manually. And that could be using an Excel spreadsheet. And one of the things that we like to do as an organization is to reassure them that a lot of the clients that you like prior to coming to ApprovalMax are actually doing it manually. But you've come to the right place. And this is where we can equip you and empower you to know that plugging in a software like ApprovalMax into your accounting system like Xero or QuickBooks can save you time. And how that looks, you know, we often like to look at our client base and study the impact it's had for someone who's gone from using the manual process, right, to now automating it. And we found that businesses may be spending hours in a week, let's say 10 hours a week, approving an invoice or a purchase order manually. That could look like me sending you an email, say, oh, Rebecca, can you approve this bill of, I don't know, £10,000, right? And you may be on holiday, you may be living your best life in Dubai. So that could take time, and ultimately have you been able to have the time to do your due diligence to check whether that bill or invoice is credible, is legitimate. And a lot of the clients who then use ApprovalMax find that once they plug it in, 50% of invoices and bills are approved within a day.
Yeah, and I actually was involved in quite a large procurement system, sort of a remodeling, if you will, and it was taking something like 2 weeks for purchase invoices to be approved. And again, I'm talking within the last decade, which was just incredible. And sometimes that would be because, you know, somebody had gone on holiday, or they just had such a backlog of emails that they just never got to it, or they lost it in that process. And I always think, well, the time spent between somebody typing up an email going, this is from such a body, blah, 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 which could take someone 5 minutes, to here's the invoice. They might attach the wrong invoice, have to redo it again, or they might not attach all of the information required, or one person's doing it differently over here to this person. And then all of a sudden, you've got something that's just sat there on somebody's email trail, again, not yet approved, then delaying a massive process. And I think if you've got that system in place where it's, okay, well, if this person's not available, then this automatically goes to this person in the approval process. They've got all the documentation, they've got the link to the invoice, whatever they need, ready to go in front of them. They're going to be much more motivated to get that approved and review all of that documentation now, as opposed to, again, different formats that I've dealt with in the past, emails, where it's, here's just a lump of information, check this. And people either become complacent, don't check all the right details, or it suddenly becomes very easy again, in particular when we're talking about supply invoices and bank details on supplier invoices, if you've got a manual process, are you actually going to that invoice and checking, do those bank details match the last invoice I've had? Yes or no? And are they doing that? And I've seen cases where they're not. But if you've got an approval process and system in place, those checks are there. And the minute they change, there's an audit trail. Who changed it? Why did they change it? Did they ask the right questions? Then you can go back and go, right, well, you changed this, but you didn't ask any questions, right? Financial controls we need to look at. Who changed it? Do you have the approvals to do that? Yes or no? Did you ask, again, the right questions? Who sent you that email? Do we need to look at all of the whole process? So it's not, again, it's really hard to pinpoint when you talk about financial controls, one area and going, this is what we're going to fix by implementing the system. It's the whole shebang.
Absolutely. It is the whole shebang. And I think one of the things when I joined ApprovalMax, I found really, really good is seeing what functionalities we have in the system to assist with that. So, for example, to your point about contact or vendor approvals, right? So we have a functionality where you can literally set up a approval process for a new contact, just so you're not just approving anything in your emails, but you're able to create an intricate approval workflow for a new contact or a new supplier. So if you've created a new contact, Rebecca, then you could perhaps send it to me for me to also check that new supplier's details to understand that, okay, if they are now going to be a new vendor that we're going to be paying, we've already done our thorough checks, and we've done our due diligence. Because let's be real, a lot of the times you're not paying these vendors £1, you're paying them in the thousands. So you want to make sure you've got that. And we've literally got that all in ApprovalMax to help. And I know you touched on, let's say if someone's away on holiday, one of the features that we have, which I absolutely love, is our job leavers. So for example, if I'm going on holiday, I keep saying Dubai because Dubai is on my is on my
I was going to say, is this some wishful thinking, or is this manifestation sort of, I'm going to Dubai?
A bit of both, a bit of manifestation, a bit of like wishful thinking, but it's on my bucket list, Dubai. But if I'm going to Dubai, I can substitute myself for someone else and say, okay, right, in the meantime, whilst I'm away, Rebecca will be the cover. So I can speak to ApprovalMax and set that up and specify the date. So if I'm away for a week or two, I could say, right, you will approve in the interim period, and once I return, then it will revert back to me. So that just ensures that whilst I'm away, there's no gap in that process. It's still very thorough. So yeah.
Yeah, and just touching on that, I have spent so much time in the past when someone's going on holiday, or even myself has gone on holiday when I worked. There's one particular practice that comes to mind where we had to create a Word document template of all of the jobs that we were working on, and then all of the times and things that needed to be chased up in the meantime. And that document itself, I'm not kidding you, must have taken a day to pull together, to be, we've got to make sure that we've done X, Y, and Z, or, whilst I'm not here, please make sure that you approve this has to go out on this date, etc., etc. So again, the time-saving element there, not just the controls in place, is immense. And yeah, it makes me really excited thinking about all of the areas that you can save time on and just make those robust systems. Why not? In this day and age, I just don't think that you can afford not to anymore. I think there's so much risk out there that businesses can face, whether you're bookkeeping, accounting, or another industry. If you don't have those systems in place, you are literally just opening a can of worms and saying, okay, have at me, doors wide open, from, and I say from every aspect, GDPR, from, a system point of view, from a cash flow point of view, from an employee, from a fraud point of view, from all of it, really. The list is never ending. So I have a question for you then. How, with ApprovalMax, can we automate to reduce that risk of fraud? I know we've touched on a couple of examples, definitely from my end there, but could you share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So there are a few things that are in place to ensure that we reduce fraud and AP AP fraud in particular. So for example, the first being segregation of duties. And what that ultimately means is the same person who is creating or raising a bill or purchase order isn't the same person approving that. And I guess people may ask, why is that so important? What you don't want is just one person doing everything. If they have the ability to create a bill and also pay a bill, how do we know whether they're paying themselves? And that's real. You know, I attended XeroCon about a month ago or so, and I spoke to an accounting practice that we actually partner with. And one of the accountants said to me, one of our clients lost in the region of about £100,000 because one of their financial directors were able to create fake invoices and bills and pay themselves. So my immediate thought process was that, and this was prior to them even looking at ApprovalMax, right? So why didn't they have systems in place? Why wasn't there segregation of duties to distinguish that person who's creating that bill invoice from the person that's creating it? And I mean, Xero is great, but with Xero, for example, if you don't have that ability to separate the duties, so if you give various people in the business access to Xero, they'll have the ability to amend that bill invoice or even pay that bill. Whereas as we integrate with Xero, you can essentially in ApprovalMax speak to the system and say, right, Rebecca, you will never have access to Xero or the accounting system. You will just be primarily approving. So you can control the various different roles, control the rights, and that's really, really important. And as I mentioned, there are implications if you don't have these things in place. So that's one of the things that we have. We also have one of my favorite features, bill to PO matching. So what that essentially means is if a business is raising a purchase order, let's say I'm a shoe business and I want to purchase 20,000 shoes, I don't know, for whatever reason, and I want to resell that. If I don't have the ability to match that original purchase order to the bill or invoice from that specific supplier, how do I know if there's any discrepancies? How do I know whether the order that I receive is different to the order that I put in place? Because I could then pay that supplier and not know whether it's matching to the original order. So things like that in ApprovalMax, you can do a side-by-side view of the original purchase order as well as the bill to look at that before paying. And I think things like that is really, really key. I mean, there's so many other things, as I've touched on, being able to give those in ApprovalMax the ability to access ApprovalMax, but never, ever go into the accounting system. And the reason why I emphasize on that is because when I deal with various different accounting firms and I hear what their clients are saying, a lot of them are very skeptical. They really want to make sure that like not everyone and anyone can access the accounting system. But then when they come to realize ApprovalMax, they realize, okay, I can control that. I can see what's happening. And I think the last thing I will also add is the audit trail. And I know you've touched on this already, Rebecca. In ApprovalMax, regardless of what you're approving, we will track that to the time. So if I've sent you an invoice, Rebecca, to approve, ApprovalMax will note down the specific time you've approved. So you can never turn around and say, oh no, I didn't approve that, Miriam. I don't know what you're talking about. ApprovalMax will do that automatically, and it will generate an audit report. So any businesses, especially if you're being audited, a lot of businesses do get audited regularly. If you don't know what's happening in that regard, it can be problematic, right? But if you've got ApprovalMax just generating an automatic audit report, then you've got that to hand and you could fish through that and see who's approved what at what stage. So these are the kind of things that we have in place to reduce and minimize fraud.
Yeah, and also just from that point of view, from a reviewing point of view, when you're looking at staff efficiencies and you're looking at things like appraisals and all the rest of it, if you can see from there, if it's taken a particular individual a very long time to approve invoices, then you might want to look at things like their workload, why it's taken them as long as it is to approve, if there's some sort of bottleneck, etc., or you need more support, or that individual needs more support, or all of that comes with managing a team. You can make use of that also, so not just from all of the other points that we've touched on. I can't recommend ApprovalMax. It's just an incredible incredible platform that I wish I'd been around circa 10 years ago, but you know, wants and wishes, hindsight's a lovely, lovely thing, isn't it? So then last question for you, because I'm aware of the time and I always go over the 20-minute chat, as we can see here, is in terms of finding out more information about ApprovalMax and all of the other elements that you touch on, all of the features, etc. How can somebody get a hold of the team, and what does that look like? So can we follow you on LinkedIn? Is there anything on YouTube, for example? Any videos, demos, anything else that we can take advantage of to learn more about ApprovalMax?
Yeah. Because, thank you for that question, Rebecca, because it's all very well speaking about it, but then how can people who may be on this webinar or live stream tap into us? So we are on LinkedIn, and we've also got our YouTube channel. And I love the YouTube channel too, because you're able to literally see some demos of the software, our recent releases. So we've recently launched 2 phenomenal features, which I absolutely love, like our ApprovalMax Capture tool and our ApprovalMax Pay tool. So that's pretty much OCR, and you're able to now pay within ApprovalMax, which was available, but it's now linked to open banking. So we launched that a couple of weeks ago, and it's exciting stuff. But things like that we will announce on our LinkedIn page, our YouTube channel, our product updates. As you know, I mean, I'm on this webinar, more than happy to connect with anyone, but we're pretty much everywhere and anywhere. And even if you go into our website, there should be a section at the top that says booking a demo, and our team is phenomenal. They'll literally take you through the software, the demo of the software in detail. So before you even look to sign up, you're able to see, okay, how does this work in our practice? How does this work in our business? Because sometimes, let's be real, not every software is aligned to a business, right? So it's important for you to have a demo of it. And then I guess the favorite thing I love is the fact that we've got a free 14-day free trial. So we really want to ensure that if anyone is keen to look at us, they also are able to see the value and the return on their investment prior to even signing up. So having that 14-day free trial, you as a business can test it out. You can say to me, okay, Miriam, it actually works. Or, okay, Miriam, it actually doesn't work. So you have that. So all of that is available on our websites. Feel free to follow ApprovalMax on all platforms, LinkedIn, Twitter, all platforms, and we'll be there.
Yeah, and I think I've already done it, but just in case, I will add some more links to the comments section. It should be there on YouTube. I'm not sure about LinkedIn. It's a bit funny sometimes. So if you can't find anything after that, get in touch with me and I'll put you in the right direction. Or you can find Miriam in my contacts and ApprovalMax anyway. All the team are lovely on there, and I have to say, and I'm not biased. They are really, really genuinely lovely people. So even just worth a chat. If you go to one of these events and you see them somewhere, you just want to talk to them and get to know them a bit better. And that's one of the things we're going to do in future. If you're up for it, Miriam, bring you back and learning more about you, because you are an incredible person. And we've not delved into that too much on this because of the time. So yeah, at a future point, we'll bring you back and learn more and have another one of these coffee chats. But I think we'll end it there because I know we've gone over time. Thank you to everybody who joined us, and thank you to Miriam. And it's always a pleasure. And yeah, we'll bring you back.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who's joined, and get in touch. Let's sort out your financial controls, not in 2025, but in 2024. So
get it started.
Thank you for having me, Rebecca. I appreciate it.
Well, I'll see you all in the group, and enjoy the rest of your day. Well, take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.